I don't even know. I have no idea.
Okay.
Protein content? I don't know. I think there must be high sodium because they're really salty.
Okay. I think we're ready to start. Thank you, everybody, for waiting for us while we were figuring out the Zoom. Thank you so much for coming. This event is done by the John Adams College YAF chapter. I am the chairman of that YAF chapter, and I've always, since I started last year, have wanted to do an event on the Jewish people. So I'm really excited about this event, really glad that you all are here. Before I introduce our speaker, my sister Ari, we're going to hear from her for about 45 minutes. I don't know, however long she goes. And she'll stay for 30 minutes to an hour afterwards. So if you have questions, feel free to ask her questions. And then afterwards, we also have some cookies and water, refreshments, and a ton of stickers and pins and magazines. Feel free to grab and take whatever you want from over there. Okay, now I'm going to introduce Ari. The first thing you must know about Ari Johnson is that she was named after a male Jewish freedom fighter from the book Exodus, written by Leon Uris. Perhaps it was her name that drove her to study Jewish history from a very young age. She has studied Judaism and the Old Testament extensively, has written articles on Jewish people and the land of Israel, and has given speeches regarding the relentless issue of anti-Semitism. She has also visited Israel twice. She studied for 4 years here at John Adams College, getting her bachelor's in the classical liberal arts. She then went and studied in Greece in Savannah, Georgia, getting her master's degree from Ralston College. She now works at Encounter Books in New York City, which has recently published the acclaimed Golden Thread series, A History of Western Tradition and Land of Hope, an invitation to the American people. Though not a Jew herself, she has over the years gained a deep love of the Jewish people and appreciation for all the fruits of their faith. Give it up for Ari. Breaking this up. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I know a lot of you, and then there's some of you I don't know, but I'm happy to have you here, and I'm so excited to speak. As Eden mentioned, I was named after the book Exodus, which, looking back, I think was inspired. Here's the book here. The book Eden mentioned was written in 1958, which was 10 years after Israel became an official country. And it was a huge bestseller and tells the true, miraculous, remarkable story of how Israel became a nation. One of my professors from college always said that words have a natural habitat. So I took my copy of Exodus to Israel to properly christen it in the land it's written about. That's Israel in the background. You got to take your books to where they belong. Growing up, I always heard words, and maybe you did as well, that have to do with the Middle Eastern conflict. Words like the West Bank and the Gaza Strip and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There's so much terminology, and it feels like this really massive story that it really is easy to just say, this is too complicated for me to understand. Now that I'm older and able to use the internet somewhat responsibly, I feel like I have a greater grasp of what's going on, better than when I was 8 years old. But it's interesting because when I ask people what they think about the conflict in the Middle East or in Israel, the answer is almost always the same. It's complicated. Let me just first say, I do understand that it is complicated. But I often find that this response is less of an answer and more of an excuse to not have an opinion on a conflict that is very, very, very tense, especially today. It's strange to me, though, because it's rare that people feel the need to read 10 books and get a master's degree in a subject before claiming to have some kind of opinion or make a moral judgment on an international conflict. Nobody certainly does this with conflicts in Russia or China or any other country in the world, but Israel is different. Israel is always different. You've kind of noticed that theme today. But never fear, I have read lots of books about Israel and talked to tons of people and read a couple of articles here and there. And I want to talk about the two things that are most helpful in determining the stance you should take with Israel. So forget the master's degree and reading 100 books. I think these two things are the most helpful. Number one, read the scriptures. Number two, visit the land of Israel. Obviously, one of these things feels very possible and the other is a little expensive, so it's not necessarily the easiest list. But I did both of these things, and to this day, they have been the strongest things that I could have done to determine what I think about the conflict, to separate fact from fiction, and to make sure that I am living in accordance with my Christian covenantal beliefs. So let's start with number one, the scriptures. When I was in my teens, I read every book of Scripture with the express purpose of understanding Israel, Jerusalem, and the Jews. So this includes the Bible, and for those of us who are not LDS, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. It was a super enlightening study. And this is what I learned. And we're going to go into the Scriptures. First, we're going to do a brief family history review because it's really helpful when talking about Israel, but I already know all of you know this because you're very smart people. Abraham is the father of the Bible. He really kicks this off. He has a son named Isaac, who has a son named Jacob, who has a brother named Esau. Esau's not really part of this right now. Isaac has a son named Jacob. Jacob has 4 wives and 12 sons. His 12 sons are what constitute the 12 tribes of Israel, or the children of Israel. And they live, all of their conflict in the Bible takes place in the region of Israel today. Judah, which is one of the tribes, I can't see the name, but what? Judah's supposed to be on there, I can't see the name. Judah is one of the 12 sons. The Jews come from the tribe of Judah, and the Reubenites come from the tribe of Reuben, and the Levites come from the tribe of Levi. So they all have their individual tribes, but the Jews come from the tribe of Judah, which come from the 12 tribes of Israel. So that's going to be really important as we talk about this, what's going on in Israel today. And what I want to talk about is the 4 covenants that are outlined in the Bible. And these are the 4 covenants: the Abrahamic covenant, the Mosaic covenant, the Davidic covenant, and the New covenant. And these constitute the entire Bible and tell a large part of the story of Israel today. And unfortunately, we're about to get really deep in Bible verses, but it's all really important. But so bear with me, and then we'll get to the fun pictures from Israel. We're going to start with covenant number 1, the Abrahamic covenant. This is truly one of the most important covenant of all time. So I have a couple of verses here. I have only pulled a few verses for each covenant. The Bible is riddled with verses about these covenants. So we learn in Genesis about the Abrahamic covenant. Now the Lord had said unto Abraham, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee. And make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curseth thee. And in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. So this covenant is expansive. It's for the family of Abraham, but every person that's ever born is going to be a part of and is going to be blessed by the Abrahamic covenant. Lift up now thine eyes, for all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth. I am the Almighty God. Walk before me, and be thou perfect. And I will make my covenant between me and thee, and I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed after thee, for an everlasting covenant, meaning it is still in force. It started then, and it goes all the way until the end of time. It is everlasting. And then this is after Abraham almost sacrificed Isaac. By myself have I sworn, saith the Lord, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. What's really important about the Abrahamic covenant is that the seed of Abraham, which ends up being, back to our family tree, the 12 tribes of Israel, through them all the nations of the earth will be blessed. And this covenant specifically says, I will bless them that bless thee, and I will curse them that curseth thee. This is where we get the foundation that the children of Israel, the descendants of Abraham, are truly a covenantal people, a special people. They've been set apart by God. The second covenant, and then the other thing the Abrahamic covenant outlines is that the land belongs to these people. For all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. The land that's given to Abraham is the land of Canaan, which in modern day terms is the modern day nation of Israel. The second covenant I want to talk about is the Mosaic covenant. This has a lot to do with Jewish law. So we're in the book of Exodus and Deuteronomy, which is where we have a lot of verses about what you can and can't do. You have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and an holy nation. Part of their covenant is the Sabbath. Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath for a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. And then finally, see, I have set before thee this day life and good, and death and evil. In that I command thee this day to love thy God, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments, and his statutes, and his judgments, that thou mayest live and multiply. And the Lord thy God shall bless thee in the land whither thou goest to possess it. I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live. Sorry, I know this is like so much scriptural reading, but what we're learning from all of these covenants, but from the Mosaic covenant, is when you keep the commandments, when you follow God, you will be blessed. So not only are the children of Israel this covenantal people, but they have a lot of responsibility. They have to follow in the ways of God so that they can receive the blessings of God. But it's very clear that ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people. They are still set apart. They are living in this kind of higher way. The third covenant outlined in the Bible is the Davidic covenant. And of course, the names of these are named after specific people. We have Abraham, we have Moses, that's kind of his timeline. And now we're at King David, so he's kind of comes after Moses. So we're a little later in the Bible, and starts, now therefore so shalt thou say unto my servant David, I took thee from the sheepcote, and thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever. And I will settle him in mine house and in my kingdom forever, and his throne shall be established forevermore. And I will settle him in mine house and in my kingdom forever. These are almost the same verse. That's how repetitive these are. And his throne shall be established forevermore. That is the same verse. That is why I put it on twice. Like, they sound so similar. And then the next one. I have made a covenant with my chosen. I have sworn unto David my servant. Thy seed will I establish forever, and build up thy throne to all generations. My covenant will I not break. His seed shall endure forever, and his throne as the sun before me. So what's a little bit different about this one is that by this point in the Bible, the 12 tribes of Israel who inhabited this land, they've split off a little bit. The 10 tribes split off into the northern kingdom, and then Judah and Benjamin kind of maintain the southern kingdom. What we know about King David is that he is a descendant of the tribe of Judah. And then what we know from more in the Bible is that Christ is a descendant of David. Christ is a descendant of the tribe of Judah. He is Jewish. So what we learn from the Davidic covenant is not only are the children of Israel a covenantal people and set apart, but even more specifically, David's line in particular, which is the Jewish line, will endure forever on his throne, that he will rule in this kingdom. And obviously, for Christian belief, we know that Christ comes through this and Christ fulfills this covenant, but literally, the covenant is made in regards to the land and the ruling of Israel. We then go to the last covenant, which is the new and everlasting covenant. And there's a lot of verses about this, but the one in Jeremiah kind of describes it the best. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers, which my covenant they break, but this shall be the covenant that I will make. I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, for I will forgive their iniquity and I will remember their sin no more. The new and everlasting covenant is the one that we are living in right now. It's what ushers in the New Testament. Testament is like another word for covenant. So we begin the New Testament with this new and everlasting covenant, and that basically means that the law is now inward. It's about our contrite hearts and our broken spirits. It's this internal covenant that we have with God. And then it also makes reference to the Israelites' difficulty in keeping previous covenants. But as I said about the Abrahamic covenant, it is everlasting. So the new and everlasting covenant does not void the previous covenants. It's an addition. It's a new covenant of the foundation of these other covenants, but a new one, a new understanding of how to view these things. So these are the 4 covenants that the Bible helps us describe. And this word covenant is this binding relationship that we have with God. And it's something that Christians and Jews share. We're all bound by these covenants, the new and everlasting covenant, the Abrahamic covenant, Mosaic, and Davidic. And we have this covenant relationship with the Jewish people. And I think that's so important to understand as we look towards understanding the modern concept of Israel. And let me find my paper. The next thing I want to talk about, more scripture verses, I know. The next thing I want to talk about is the role of the Gentiles in scriptures, not necessarily the Jews. So we've just talked about all these scriptures that outline, these are my people, and they've been set apart. Well, what about everyone else? What about everyone else that's not in the 12 tribes of Israel? What does it say about those people? And here's a few examples. Isaiah 49, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I will lift up my hand to the Gentiles, me, if I don't know your lineage, I guess, and set up my standard to the people, and they shall bring thy sons in their arms, and thy daughter shall be carried upon their shoulders. And kings shall be thy nursing fathers, and their queens thy nursing mothers. They shall bow down to thee with their face toward the earth, and lick up the dust of thy feet, and thou shalt know that I am the Lord, for they shall not be ashamed that wait for me. So all of us in the 12 tribes of Israel, especially non-Jews, have this pretty clearly outlined that we are supposed to lift these people up. We're supposed to recognize who they are. We're supposed to carry them on our shoulders. The next verse, thus saith the Lord of hosts, in those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold of out of all languages of the nations, even shall take hold of the skirt of him that is a Jew, saying, we will go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. We're supposed to recognize that God is with these people. They are bound to him in a unique way, and follow them. Be a part of that, because we know that God is with them. These last two scriptures are from the Book of Mormon. Wherefore he will bring them again in remembrance of the covenants by which they are bound. And now the Lord saith, I will not utterly destroy my people, but I will bring them again from the land of their captivity, and I will show unto the Gentiles that I am the Lord their God, the Holy One of Israel. So God announces himself to the Gentiles as, I am the God of the Israelites, and I belong to you as well. And then this last verse, also from the Book of Mormon and Ether, wherefore he that fighteth against Zion and the covenant people of the Lord shall be smitten with a sore curse, and he shall be smitten even unto destruction. It's a little bit of a downer, but there's consequences to not doing this. There's like curses involved, because with covenants, that's kind of how it goes. So not only do they have a responsibility, we have a responsibility as well. And that brings a close to my first thing that I think everyone ought to do in understanding the Israel conflict. Read your scriptures. As Christians, we acknowledge that the Bible, if you're LDS, the Book of Mormon, and further scriptures as well, those are the words of God, and they will teach you more about Israel than any news story, I promise. But the second part is also important as well, because the Bible is missing a little bit of modern day context that you can get when you go to the land. So now I want to talk about part 2, which is the land of Israel. And this is where things get so exciting, because I love the place so much. I had the opportunity to visit Israel for my first time in 2020. Crazy, 2 months before COVID shut down the world. I feel really lucky about that. I traveled there for my first time with an evangelical organization called Passages Israel. Would recommend. I mention this because Jewish-Christian relationships have been and still are pretty bad. I know it's kind of shocking to hear, but we have not had Christians and Jews have not been on very good terms for most of history, and even today it can be a little bit tense. And this is an organization, the one I went with, that seeks to bridge the divide between the two groups. The mission of the organization goes as follows. Their mission is discover your roots, encounter Israel, tell your story. And that is exactly what I got and get to do today. Many Christians aspire to visit Israel because it is what we call the Holy Land. It's the place where Jesus lived and taught and died. My trip was unique because while we got to go see famous Christian sites like the Jordan River and the Garden of Gethsemane and Jerusalem, we spent as much time, if not more, studying and observing the political situation, specifically the founding of the country of Israel and their relationship with their Middle Eastern neighbors and the Palestinian people residing in Israel, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. So we did go to see the sites that Jesus was at, and that was amazing, but we spent the exact same time, if not more, just studying like the geopolitical conflict and figuring out like what's going on and how can we expose these kids to like the real situation that's happening here. Israel is the Holy Land, but it is also a nation founded in 1948 after World War II and the Holocaust. The land is important to many, many people, including Christians, Muslims, and Jews. But it is not only a tourist destination, but a real country with an inspiring story, a constitution, government structure, elections, and defensive military force. So while you go and you see the Jordan River or whatever, you are actually going to visit a real deal country. It's not just like this autonomous land that people just go in and out of. They have borders, they have government, they have a president, they have all of the things that we have here in the United States. After visiting, I find the nation of Israel to be as inspiring as the accounts of victory in the Bible with the children of Israel. It is a truly remarkable place. I landed on January 1, 2020, and it was after a 45-minute interrogation from Israeli authorities over the Hebrew origins of my name. There are consequences to being named after Exodus, and they're going to ask you about that. So that's, before you go, just know that going in. My trip to Israel was fun, exciting, educational, and all of the other traits I usually get from my trips, but it was more important than that, and I could tell by the feeling I had when I landed that never went away. You will really feel that there's something different about this place. While in Israel, we learned the incredible story of how the nation came to be. We learned about how the country was born in a bomb shelter, about how the minute they announced the new nation of Israel, they were immediately attacked by all 6 of their Middle Eastern neighbors, a war they won successfully. We learned about how quickly they built their civilization. We learned about how many thriving businesses have been started in Israel. We learned about how Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. We learned the incredible story of how a few million people banded together and resurrected the dead language of Hebrew, a feat that would be impossible with Latin or ancient Greek. That's truly one of the coolest things. You cannot grasp how difficult it is to resurrect a dead language. And they took biblical Hebrew, and 6 million of them said, from this day forward, we're going to be speaking Hebrew. And if you go to Israel today, they speak Hebrew. They speak biblical Hebrew, essentially. They've had to add a ton of vocab, obviously, but they speak the language that their forefathers spoke. And talk to anyone that studies ancient Greek or ancient Latin, it's not possible. It's not possible. Italy's never going to band together to pull something off like that. Truly amazing story of how they resurrected their language. We learned about the sacrifice of living in Israel, sometimes costing these people their lives. We learned how to make the best falafel I've ever had in my life. Huge part of my trip. The one consistent message in every story was that the Israeli people decided, the Jewish people, I guess I should say, decided in the aftermath of the Holocaust that they would no more be victims to European and American anti-Semitism, but the warriors of the Bible who defended their families' freedoms and land with their very lives. Now, you might be thinking that I was a little bit brainwashed hearing about Israel from only the Israeli side, but that is not the case. My group spent 2 days in the West Bank, also known as Palestine, also known as Judea and Samaria. Part of the conflict is that no one knows what to call it. We heard from many people, some who despised Israel and felt that the land had been unjustly taken from those who originally lived there. We got to see the difference between Israeli and Palestinian life. We talked to Arabs who lived in Israel, Christians who lived in Palestine, and atheists who lived in both. We would have visited the Gaza Strip if the visit wouldn't have endangered our lives, but they were fully we're going to show you everything, so in so much as you can be safe. We got to see the signs as we drove into the West Bank, banning our Israeli tour guide from coming with us to Bethlehem and other sacred sites and any other Israeli traveling with us. These are you can just sense as you see the sign, you're like, something tense is going on. This feels kind of strong language. Everywhere we went, all over the land of Israel, we talked to people and heard their stories and realized that there was a lot of thoughts and opinions going on that made things quite complicated. I'm going to use that word a little bit because it is a justifiable word to use with this conflict. In Israel, there are walls everywhere. Walls preventing acts of terrorism, walls establishing proper borders, walls trying to make this disputed land conflict work. At the Gaza border, we saw walls put up by Israelis to provide some kind of safety from Hamas, the then and somewhat now current government of Gaza, who have this written in their charter. This is a quote: "The day of judgment will not come about until Muslims fight Jews and kill them, and Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it." So it kind of see why maybe a wall gets put up when people have that in their founding documents. We visited the town of Sderot, which is less than a mile from the Gaza border. This town is bombed 156 days of the year by Hamas, at least when I was there. There's been a lot of recent developments since I visited Israel, but in this town, their parks work for both entertainment and bomb shelters in case you find yourself at the park during an attack. The walls between the town and Gaza attempt to replicate the sky, as you can see here, so they can pretend for a minute that their neighbors aren't working overtime to kill them. We got to see the other wall Israel put up between them and the Palestinians in the West Bank. That's this wall here, with messages like, "Make hummus not war," and "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." We saw swastikas, but we also saw peace symbols, signifying that the conflict was indeed quite complicated, using that word again. The whole point was to draw your own conclusions based on the evidence of your eyes and ears, and I did. Here's a few more pictures of the wall. It actually kind of almost works. It's hard to see, but it is a wall. It's not the sky. Here's the park, AKA bomb shelter, little bomb shelter snake. But the complicated part was not Israel and their right to exist, but why the Palestinians living in poverty in the West Bank kept electing horrible leadership who spent most of their time trying to harass and kill Jews than run a stable society. The complicated part was why Israel gets berated by the United Nations more than any other nation on earth, a majority of government leaders, and a ton of social media users when they are trying to live with a terrorist organization that somehow thinks it's a good idea to bomb them more than half the days of the year. The complicated part was why Israel is always the bad guy when they live in a constant state of persecution. The complicated part is wondering why Israeli kids spend half the nights a year sleeping in bomb shelters. The complicated part was wondering why the Jews are once again the bad guys, even though the Holocaust was less than 100 years ago. I have so many of these. The complicated part was wondering why Israel is trying to negotiate with people in the Middle East who have no intentions of peace. The complicated part is wondering why the United Nations seem to have made the conflict so much worse than it needs to be, all while saying they are trying to help. So I admit that the situation in the Middle East is complicated, but it is complicated for reasons that are not usually talked about. So the situation is complicated, but it's certainly not complicated to distinguish who is in the right and who is in the wrong. I hope you all have an opportunity to visit the land of Israel and draw your own conclusions so you don't have to take my word for it. Kind of the final thing I want to talk about is the Israeli approach to anti-Semitism, especially following the Holocaust. If you visit any Holocaust museum across the world, and this counts in the United States as well, you will see the slogan that has been adopted at these museums. And the slogan is never again. I mean, this is all over these museums, never again. The message feels quite clear, but if it's not clear, I suspect this is what it means. Never again will we allow 6 million Jews to be burned in ovens. Never again will we allow the Jewish race to be obliterated off the face of the map. Never again will we allow Jews to be openly condemned, persecuted with acts of violence, driven out of businesses, and thrown out of countries where they made their livelihoods. These sound like almost easy promises to make. Like the things I'm saying is crazy. Like, duh, Ari, yeah, that's such an easy thing to say. They sure sounded easy when I visited the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. for my first time, but I will be the first to admit that I was naive. I mistakenly thought that the Holocaust was bad enough that none of these things would happen again. Luckily, Israel has not made the same mistake. In 1945, at the end of World War II, they had had enough of words and empty promises and instead took action. If you visit the Holocaust Museum in Israel, called Yad Vashem, built on the Mount of Remembrance, as you go through the museum, you walk downward. So you see it has kind of this interesting thing. You walk into the museum and it's like a decline. The lowest point of the museum aligns with the lowest point of the Holocaust. So you're going on this historical journey inside the museum. As you progress from there, you start to walk at an incline until you reach the end of both the museum and the story of the Holocaust. So it leaves you kind of at the end of the museum. The museum ends with a massive window looking out over the beautiful land of Israel, the land of their inheritance. This is Israel's message to visitors about the Holocaust. The Holocaust will not happen again, not because the people of the world suddenly stopped being anti-Semitic, but because the Jewish people reclaimed their land and will not give it up. And instead of being scattered across Europe, Africa, Asia, and America, they will gather together in unity and defend their land, customs, and traditions with their very lives. There's not even a plaque here. That's the end of the museum, and it's clear enough. We came, and we're not leaving, and we will die, fighting to stay here in this land. The Jews are a lot smarter than the rest of us. They realized that never again was most likely just an idealistic dream. In just the last 6 years since I traveled to Israel, anti-Jewish sentiment has skyrocketed to levels I could never have anticipated. I'm serious. Every day I get on X is another shock to my system. Holocaust denial is now quite popular. And you hear people say stuff, maybe Israel is just fudging the numbers. Maybe they made this whole thing up. The old blood libel, if you've heard of that, has returned, which in the Middle Ages was the belief that Jews killed Christian children to use their blood for rituals. And I'm not kidding. This is real stuff. People are really saying this online, and it's popular. It's very popular. Countless phrases are said every day across media, like, the Jews run Hollywood. Jews run all of the media. The Jews run New York City. Jews run the whole world. But it's not just rhetoric that's become popular. On May 21st, 2025, 2 Israeli staffers were shot and killed with their shooter shouting, "Free Palestine." It's kind of it's People say that and it doesn't mean what you think it means. In New York City, where I now live, Jewish Columbia students were unable to enter the library for finals because their fellow students banned them with shouts of "Free Palestine" once again. On the subway, this happens somewhat regularly in New York. On the subway in broad daylight with hundreds of viewers and people filming, that's how we all see this, 2 Jewish students, the video I saw, were mocked and yelled at. Just crazy. On January 28th, a man drove his car, this was a few days ago, into a Jewish synagogue in Brooklyn. These are only a small number of things that have happened in New York City alone. We could find multiple accounts just in the last month. The very worst thing that has happened since the Holocaust was on October 7th, 2023. So after both of my trips to Israel, when Hamas terrorists entered through the multiple sets of walls, entered into Israel and slaughtered 1,200 innocent men, women, and children, including babies. If you don't believe that it happened, you can watch the gruesome footage filmed by the terrorists that they took so that they could show their families their heroic acts. And that is the worst thing that's ever happened. It's the largest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust, and they're still recovering from how horrible it was. My guide, who went on my first trip to Israel, who told us what it was like to live a mile from Gaza, he was also murdered that day. And I remember we asked him 6 years ago, "Why do you live here when you get bombed all the time?" We're like, "Move to America. What are you doing here? This is awful." To which he responded, "Someone has to claim the land, and we are willing to do it." He understood this concept that if he gave up and moved somewhere else, the terrorists would come and claim the land, and they cannot let that happen. Like I said, they're not letting that happen. They'd rather die than give up the land that they fought so hard to get. The sentiment towards Israel has changed so much in just a few short years that just saying anti-Semitism is a problem immediately has people thinking you are paid by the state of Israel to say good things about it. That you can't possibly have good opinions about the Jews in Israel unless you're being manipulated into it. You might even be thinking right now, "But Ari, I can critique the government of Israel without being anti-Semitic." Of course you can. The suggestion that you can't is absurd. But there is a unique, almost obsessive level of criticism lobbied at Israel, and they are held to a uniquely high standard. It is not a critique of the government of Israel to suggest that Israel controls the world. That is a broad statement made about a broad group of people that you would never make about anyone else. I know this has been a lot of information and a lot of Bible verses, and I'm even okay if you think I'm extremely biased towards the Israeli side. I choose to believe what I saw with my eyes, what I heard with my ears, and what I read in the books of scripture that I believe in. As anti-Israel propaganda increases, I find it incredibly important to be a witness of the things that I saw. I am inspired by the words of Dwight D. Eisenhower, who made a special effort to see the concentration camps after World War II. And he said, "The things I saw beggar description. I made the visit deliberately in order to be in a position to give firsthand evidence of these things, if ever, in the future, there develops a tendency to charge these allegations merely to propaganda." And this quote has aged horribly. Well, in some ways, horribly in that it has actually happened. I mean, a lot of people really do deny that the Holocaust happened, and he went there to make sure that people knew that it did. So he had to see it with his own eyes, and I feel the same way about what I saw in Israel. I want to just close with my takeaways in case this has been a lot of information. My takeaways from both scripture and my visit to the land of Israel are this. I've made a comprehensive list. Here it is. My conclusions. Number one, the Bible is clear that the land of Israel is the promised inheritance of the children of Israel / the Jews. They have also fought wars. They have won their independence in that land, and they continue to defend it. The Jews are the keepers of the covenant. We need them in order to be grafted into the covenant. And I didn't talk about the verses as much about this, but they are the only known tribe. Of course, there was 12 tribes of Israel. We don't know where they are. They're scattered across the face of the earth. We do know where the tribe of Judah is. Most of them live in Israel and a couple other places in the world as well. We actually need them to be alive. And we need them to be in the land of Israel because if you've read the Bible and the book of Revelation, we need someone to be holding down that land because there's a lot of stuff that has to happen there in the coming years as the second coming approaches. We need them because they are the carriers of the Abrahamic covenant, and we are grafted into them. They don't need us, we need them. They are the known carriers of the covenant. Number three, the covenants that God made with the children of Israel / the Jews are the foundation of Christianity. To hate them is to hate the foundation of your own faith. Many of you have maybe noticed this popular movement to remove Judeo from the Judeo-Christian grouping. We don't need the Judeo, we just want to be Christian. Such a thing does not exist. You're burning the roots of your tree and your tree will die. The Jews and the children of Israel in the Old Testament is the foundation of Christianity. And if you want to get rid of that, good luck. Your religion has no foundation anymore. So we rely on them in some way to give our faith a meaning and a foundation. Number 4, the covenants God made with Israel are everlasting. They are still in force. The Bible lives on today. It's not just old language that is no longer valid. Number 5, the Gentiles are commanded to respect and remember the covenant and to nurture and care for the Jewish people. Otherwise, they will be cursed. Sorry, I said that pretty bluntly, but I think I mean that. That is how the Bible says it. We are supposed to nurture them and help them in whatever way you want to interpret that. If you want to oppose them, good luck. The cursing is written in the Bible. Number 6, modern day Israel has bloomed like a rose. The story of their success can only be explained by the influence of providence and their covenantal relationship with God. It's insane. If you want to read Exodus by Leon Uris, that's kind of a plug for my name and the book, you can, and that illustrates a lot of it. This story is insane. They leave the concentration camps after the most traumatic experience of their life, and they just get right to work. And if you go to Israel now, it's just like any other, they have everything you could ever want. It is a thriving society. One of the stories I learned when I was there, they found a date pit that was 2,000 years old from the time of Christ. And of course, like 10 years in, they already had like crazy date scientists. So they take it to the lab and they're like, we have to grow this. Grew a ton of date trees from this date pit. So now they're like, our dates coming from the time of Christ. You're like, what? I can't believe you're doing that while defending your land, while creating the government. Like every story is like that. They've really bloomed like a rose. And you don't even have to agree with the government they did create and the way that they're orchestrating laws. They have created a full-blown society in just a really short amount of time and a whole-blown language. And it is a crazy story. Next one, number 7, going to Israel is way, way better than reading about it in the news. If you have the opportunity to go. It's just different when you're there. The news is crazy. The news hates Israel. That's my personal belief. They don't want, it's different when you go. You have to touch grass in Israel or dirt, date pit, whatever, to really know what's going on there. There's something about the land and you can feel it in your bones the second that you land. Number 8, the conflict is complicated, but for all the reasons you've never heard about. So that's my big conclusion after the beginning. It's complicated, whatever. It is complicated, it's just not complicated in the ways you think. It's not complicated where you say, I can't even make a decision because I'm so afraid of deciding it seems like everyone's wrong. No, it's complicated for all the reasons you haven't heard about and the news doesn't tell you them and it's so hard to figure them out. And my last takeaway, read the scriptures and visit the land yourself. These are the 2 best sources to develop your own thoughts and take on Israel. You don't have to take my word for it. Go and read the Bible yourself. Go and visit the land yourself and take from that what you will. I just want to close with 2 final thoughts. One comes from John Adams, of which this college is named, who wrote this letter to a friend. He wrote in this letter, I will insist that the Hebrews have done more to civilize men than any other nation. If I were an atheist and believed in blind eternal fate, I should still believe that fate had ordained the Jews to be the most essential instrument for civilizing the nations. This is well before Israel was even a country. There's really something about this people. God is with them. That's what the Bible basically says. They've been a really powerful force for good and hopefully continue so. And then the final thing I would like to share is from the book of Chronicles. This group of scriptures just hits me so hard every time I read it. This is from the book of Chronicles, chapter 16. And the first line in particular, I find so powerful. Be ye mindful always of his covenant. Remember the covenant all the time. Always be mindful of it. You don't just exist in isolation. You are bound in Christianity. You are bound to all sorts of promises and people and lands and blessings. Be ye mindful always of his covenant, the word which he commanded to 1,000 generations, even of the covenant which he made with Abraham and of his oath unto Isaac, and hath confirmed the same to Jacob for a law and to Israel for an everlasting covenant, still in force, saying, Unto thee will I give the land of Canaan and the lot of your inheritance, when ye were but few, even a few, and strangers in it. And when they went from nation to nation and from one kingdom to another people, he suffered no man to do them wrong. Yea, he reproved kings for their sake, saying, touch not mine anointed, and do my prophets no harm. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all so much for coming again. Grab snacks, ask Ari questions, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you.